Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. This is a difficult video because I have to be very cautious about the words I use because you would get not just demonetized, your video would get removed by the platform. Certain words will be sensitive. And I'm going to be talking about what's been going on in Iran over the last few days, almost a week now. Mainstream media in the West still pretty silent. They're not really reporting on it properly. There's a massive uprising against the Muslim rule in Iran, against the dictatorial regime of the country that did the revolution in 1979, got rid of the monarchy and the Shah of Iran, and then everything went down. Not that that model towards the end, the Shah was great, because towards the end there were problems, but before that, decades before, we had constitutional monarchy in Iran. Now the idea right now is this uprising, which was triggered, and the spark was a 22-year-old woman, Masa Amini, who was approached and arrested by the morality police in Iran because she wasn't covering her hair properly, the hijab nonsense. And so she was arrested, they beat her up, and she went into coma, and now she lost her life at the hands of the Muslim leaders of the Iranian government. And then that started the chaos. Now, for those of you not familiar, just in case you don't know, this was the difference between pre-revolution in 1979, up there, and now this is post-revolution 1979. This is today in Iran. You moved it from a liberal, westernized, a liberal society that was in favor of free speech, free markets, and free people, into chaos. And now the whole thing is exploding, and you wonder why. This is why you're going to have a situation where young and old, and of course, men and women, girls and boys, they're all coming out to protest. And this time, it's slightly different. That's why I wanted to make this video to tell you guys about what's the difference between this protest movement and all the other protest movements that they've had in the past. Well, since 1979, there's been this coincidental trend every 10 years, basically. First one was late 80s, so around 1988, 1989, when it was the communists of Iran, the Mujahideen, who were also sent into exile in France and Iraq. They were not the good guys, basically, either, because they were fighting the Islamic regime, but they were also a bit communistic, and they were also a bit cultist. They were a bit violent and militant. That was the first wave. There was a bit of a clash on the streets of Iran, and the government won. 10 years later, around 1998, 99, there was a student protest movement because they shut down a newspaper and they shut down a basic level of free speech and free press that they had a little bit. And that movement was led by students. It was very bloody and it got big. But again, it got shut down because it was mostly led by the young, educated, liberal-minded students. And then 10 years later, in 2009, again, you had another movement. That was called the Green Movement because it was based on the presidential election that was rigged and stolen, even though, of course, there is no real democracy in Iran, but at least on some level, people still had faith. They felt they suspected that the regime would essentially steal the election in such an obvious way, in your face way. And that movement also got huge in 2009, and it went for a couple of years, but again was defeated. 10 years later, 2019, we had another organic movement that started. This time it was not political, it was based on cost of living crisis. The sanctions started to work, and of course the incompetence of the politicians in Iran. The economy is in chaos, and the political atmosphere is absolutely disgusting and toxic. So people came up, and that hasn't really stopped since 2019. They don't really fully stop. It's just been minimized, but they've been protesting. They've been going on strikes in various cities and towns across the country. But of course, lockdown happened, so there was a bit of a pause. Now they're back out because of that 22-year-old woman. But in reality, that was just a trigger. It's the same movements from 2019. They have changed something. The difference between this movement and all the others that I mentioned decades before is two things. One, Whether you like it or not, most of those other movements were led by more middle class, liberal minded, educated, and younger people. That's very important. But at the same time, if you want revolution to happen, you need the working classes. You need the peasants, like they said in France. You need the plebs to come out. You need ordinary people. You need the poor, the older generation, the religious people. You need everybody to come out. And that was the difference between this one and those. And secondly, it seems like there is finally some sort of unity behind what comes next. Because before there was so many different opposition groups, and they all have their own ideas. You have the commies, the Mujahideen people who want communism. Then you've got, of course, some people who just want some sort of wishy-washy liberal republic. Don't know what that means. And then you've always had the constitutional monarchists. Now, the unifying figure, finally, is the crown prince of Iran who lives in Washington, D.C. His father was the Shah, the last Shah. And people are now getting behind him and his idea, which is to introduce constitutional monarchy in Iran. And he does not want to be a dictator. He doesn't want to actually be the leader in that sense, to be a supreme leader, to lead the country. It's simply the movement that we now exist, they have in Iran is mostly everybody's behind the same idea to have a referendum monitored by the international community after the idiots leave, of course. And then, of course, decide to push and get the consent of the people to bring back the royal family, but this time in a constitutional monarchy way, with parliamentary democracy, a similar system that we have in the United Kingdom. This is the difference, and I just want to give you a quick update on what's been going on. And it's very difficult. I have to make sure I don't really say the wrong words so YouTube doesn't really get triggered. But hopefully it's worked. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section, because there's going to be a lot of updates on this. Actually, if you want to find out more about all the situation with Iran, then follow me on Twitter, because I'm sending out tweets, or Instagram as well. Twitter and Instagram, I've been posting on them all the videos, all the clips. But the current situation is that they've shut down the internet. They've blocked the internet in Iran. But people are now starting the campaign to ask Elon Musk to send one of his satellites to help the Iranians on the ground. And also the group Anonymous have gotten involved. They have hacked a number of CCTV and all the cameras in the streets from the government cameras to disrupt them. And they are now going to be targeting I believe, the main TV station as well. It's their version of BBC, but more brainwashy. But I'll keep you guys posted on that issue. We're still trying to put pressure on the mainstream media and mainstream establishment, because the people of Iran, they don't actually want foreign intervention. They say this is our fight. We'll do it. They don't even want handouts, any financial support. They simply want to be acknowledged. They simply want their voices to be heard in the media and across the public forums in the West. That's why they want Donald Trump back. There have been so many people who've been chanting Trump's names on the streets, because they know that he's not a warmonger. He doesn't really want to just randomly start conflicts, but he's been very vocal when he was president in support of the Iranian people, the Persians, who want a revolution now. And they do not trust the Democrats. The Democrats have always let them down. Whether it was Jimmy Carter in 1979, the revolution, whether it was Barack Obama in 2009, the Green Movement, or whether it was Joe Biden recently. This is the end of my rant. Thank you so much for all the support. Subscribe to the channel, click on the bell next to it. I'm Tousi, and we are the media.